Hey all you people, welcome to my first video! I have some big plans and I am excited to share them all with you. My main plan for this channel is to celebrate other creators and people who I'm a big fan of. I also enjoy making projects like digital drawings, paintings, sewing, and more recently, miniatures. My hope this year is to tackle a ton of projects to celebrate those creators that I want to talk about. Might sound a bit vague at the moment, but as more videos come out, I think it'll make more sense. My first project is all about celebrating the channel Watcher. If you aren't familiar with that name, you might be familiar with their founders. If you take Ryan Bergara and Shay Madej from BuzzFeed Unsolved, and you take Stephen Lim from Worth It, and you mix in a small talented team, you get Watcher. They launched their new channel back in January of 2020, and even with the pandemic, they still had a ton of great content. Trust me, they were one of the many obsessions I had last year to keep me sane during the Rona times. Please go check out their channel if you haven't already. I guarantee that you're gonna find something that you enjoy. And of all that amazing content that they released last year, there was one that stood above the rest to me, and that is Puppet History. It's a hilarious history lesson / game show where you learn about history from the professor, who may or may not have been there when these events took place, while the two contestants, one normally being Ryan, compete for history points to see who will be the history master. It was such a treat to watch them flawlessly take their season 1 in a studio and translate it in season 2 online through video chat. I was so inspired by the work that they put into that show that I actually created this fan art. I've been trying my hand at digital art for a while now, but I had never tackled a project this big. It took me quite a few months and a couple redraws, but I was really happy with the results. And that drawing led me to my first project. I was messing around on the internet. I wasn't quite looking for inspiration, just kind of browsing to see what was out there. Have you guys ever heard of a book nook? It's not a cozy spot to read your favorite books, although that was the first thing I thought of when I heard it. It's basically a miniature diorama that you can sit within your bookshelf. I've mostly seen Harry Potter ones, but there are a ton of them out there. And as soon as I laid my eyes on them, I just knew I had to make one. I just didn't know where to start. Long story short, after seeing all the different ideas out there, my mind was just made up. I had to recreate my drawing in real space. The only problem with a book nook though is that they typically go between books on a shelf, so that means that they're vertical. My drawing is horizontal, so it wouldn't quite fit into that format. So I kind of decided that it's basically just going to be a diorama at that point, but I'm still very excited. I have a few surprises that I will be adding later on, but just picture my drawing itself, but in real space. Oh, and small. Exciting, right? And that leads us to this first video. As I create more projects in the future, I may finish them first and then release those videos on a schedule, but this project I'm so excited about, I'm just doing it now and I'm going to release it as I go. And please keep in mind that I've never created anything like this before, so maybe be kind about it, or maybe be kind about the results. But also know that these videos won't be as much as how-tos, as much as just watching me trying to figure out what the heck I'm doing. I'd like to bring you with me as I try, possibly fail, and maybe retry some things to make these final projects that I have in my mind. So far I've only created the frame of the theater itself, but I'm just so excited and I'm really happy with how it's turning out. And now we watch the journey to creating the stage. Let's go. My first step was to take the drawing and figure out the real-life dimensions. My plan was to fit it into a box that I had purchased from Michaels. It measures out to 11 by 7.5, so I made my document that size. I wanted to start with the theater first, so I drew over the lines I had already made, and then I made a note of each measurement. I then opened the Cricut Design Space, which is a program that goes with my Cricut machine, and using those measurements, I created a rough draft of the theater, and then I cut it out of paper so I could see it in real space. If you haven't seen one by now, the Cricut Maker is a machine that cuts out materials such as vinyl, paper, and other thin objects to assist you with your ideas. It's not a sponsor, I just personally have issues cutting my lines straight when I even use a ruler, so it helps me out a ton whenever possible. You'll see shortly that I did have to use a ruler to cut my lines, so stay tuned to see how that goes. Once the first draft was cut out in paper and I decided that I did like the look, then I used that paper as a guide to cut the main frame out of cardboard. Originally I had it as one piece and I scored it to bend, but I really didn't like how it wouldn't lay flat. Instead I decided to cut the top and bottom pieces off completely and then reattach them with tape. That way the edges could actually touch and not leave that gap. After that was finished, my base was complete. Or at least the main structure was. Shane has this great video where he explains how the real thing works, and I'll put a link to that below. His theater really is cardboard and tape. and it's also able to fold down to be portable. Although my version most likely won't be going anywhere, thanks a lot COVID, I still wanted the option as well. Plus I want mine to be as much like the original as I possibly can. Next I use the theater itself to figure out how big the sides should be. Since my drawing is of course only from the front, I'd have to take a look at Shane's version to see how those walls look. Based on the real one, it would have to help hold up the roof at a slant. My next step was to create the side walls and also to cover the main part with paper so that it could look more complete, match the original theater, and also to cover all that ugly tape. I covered it with black paper on the outside and white paper on the inside. I cut the pieces out of cardboard and then covered them with paper too. And that's when I ran into my first problem. Once I lined the sides up, I didn't think the roof looked right anymore. It wasn't at the right angle and it just was looking really weird. Plus the black paper I'd used didn't look really great anymore, so I just took it all off, and I cut the roof off. It seemed like a crazy move at the time, but it also made me feel a lot better. Apparently my camera stopped recording during it, but I cut slits into the cardboard on the side walls so it could all lay flat together. Finally, it felt like I was on the right path again. I reattached the roof, covered it with the correct paper colors, and put new paper on the outside of the theater. Once that was looking good, it was time to figure out how to attach the sides so they didn't need to be held up anymore. As you can see from Shane's original, the side walls can actually come off and then be put back on again. So it was time to try Velcro. With a bit of adjusting and plenty of glue, I had the sides lining up correctly with the roof while it all stayed in place. It worked! I finally had the beginning of the theater in my hands. Here it is so far! I'm so excited that I have a real base and it's looking legit. Wait for it. Like I said, the walls come off. Look at that. Look at my cereal box. It's awesome. Alright, so now that the main thing is created, as you can see, next step is to do the curtains and everything in the back, but also I get to add the decorations out on the front, and I'm very excited about that. So please come back, stay tuned, and next time you see me, we will have more of the theater. Bye!